Elijah and be trained by Elijah. By the way, it's funny, in Hebrew, the names Elijah and Elisha do not sound alike at all. They're very different, but in English, the names we're used to calling them, it's confusing. So it'd be easier if you were Hebrew. Maybe it wouldn't be, I don't know. But 1 Kings chapter 20 is where we're tonight, and the focus shifts away from Elijah and onto King Ahab. Remember, this is the book of 1 Kings, not the book of 1 Prophets. Okay, this is a book about the kings. And there is more said in 1 Kings about Ahab than any other king besides Solomon. In fact, one way to look at the book of 1 Kings is it's really the story of two kings, a good king and a bad king. Solomon was a good king, although flawed, and Ahab is a terrible king. He's the worst king. He's a wicked king. And so far in 1 Kings, here's what we've seen Ahab do. We know he married Jezebel, and he went along with her wicked ways. She brought in all these prophets of Baal, and he was all for that, and she persecuted the prophets of God, and he went along with that. We know he was confronted by Elijah. Elijah said it's not going to rain for 3 years, and he experienced that, 3.5 years of famine. And then he was there with Elijah when Elijah confronted him, and they went to Mount Carmel, and he saw God's hand at work. He saw the fire come down from heaven. He saw all the people shout, "Jehovah is the Lord." All of that happened. He was there. And then, just like Elijah said, after 3.5 years of drought, the rain came, just on cue. And he saw that. And it would seem to me like God was trying to get King Ahab's attention. And what we're going to see in this chapter tonight is just that. There's no talk about Elisha or Elijah. They don't even show up here. It's just God working on King Ahab. And as we work through this chapter, I'm going to give you 4 different principles. And each of them is an actionable principle. Each of them is something that you can put into practice in your own life. And they all start with the word don't. Okay? So don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I'm going to be a stereotypical preacher tonight. I'm just going to tell you a bunch of stuff not to do. All right? But it'll be helpful. We're not going to read the whole chapter tonight. There's just a pretty long chapter, but we're going to read most of it. And we're going to cover all of it. And we'll start by reading chapter 20, verses 1 through 8. And Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, gathered all his hosts together. And there were 32 kings with him, and horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and warred against it. And he sent messengers to Ahab, king of Israel, into the city, and said unto him, Thus saith Ben-Hadad, Thy silver and thy gold is mine. Thy wives also and thy children, even the goodliest, are mine. And the king of Israel answered and said, My lord, O king, according to thy saying, I am thine and all that I have. And the messengers came again, and said, Thus speaketh Ben-Hadad, saying, Although I have sent unto thee, saying, Thou shalt deliver me thy silver and thy gold and thy wives and thy children, yet I will send my servants unto thee tomorrow about this time, and they shall search thine house and the houses of thy servants, and it shall be that whatsoever is pleasant in thy eyes, they shall put in their hand and take it away. Then the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, Mark, I pray you, and see how this man seeketh mischief, for he sent unto me for my wives and for my children and for my silver and for my gold, and I denied him not. And all the elders and all the people said unto him, Hearken not unto him, nor consent. So, the first principle I'm going to give you tonight, okay, as we look at this story, is don't put your priorities in the wrong place. Don't put your priorities in the wrong place. At the beginning of this chapter, we're introduced to this man, Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria. And that's it's actually not true. Ben-Hadad is a title. It's not a name. Egypt had pharaohs, and Syria had Ben-Hadads. There's at least 3 of them in the Bible. This is the second one. And if you don't know your geography, Syria is pretty much right on top of Israel. There's Lebanon to the northwest and Syria to the northeast, right on top of Israel. And Israel was surrounded, it has always been surrounded by enemies. It's never had peaceful neighbors. To the north, they had Lebanon and Syria. To the south, they had Egypt. To the west, they had the Philistines. And eventually, to the east, they had the Assyrians, and the Babylonians, and the Persians. And Syria here is the powerful, the guy in the room. Syria is the bully on the block at this point. And they decide to flex their muscle against Israel and the northern kingdom here, okay? And Ben-Hadad makes this demand on King Ahab. He says, "Thy silver and thy gold are mine. Thy wives also and thy children, even the goodliest," so I just want the good-looking ones, "they're mine. I want all your money. I want all your family." You know what King Ahab said? "Okay. Yes, king. Here you go." He folded like a fellowship hall chair. I mean, he just immediately, "Whatever you want. You want my family? Here you go." Here's a question. What kind of man does that? I mean, I know he was married to Jezebel. Maybe he just wanted to get her out the door. But what kind of man does that? What kind of person just gives up on their family, on their own children? He's a coward. He seems like he only cares about protecting his own comfort and his own position. But that wasn't enough for Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad was like, "Well, that was too easy. Well, what else do I want? I'm going to send in my servants, and they're going to look through your house, and anything you like, they're going to take." And by the way, here's a little mini lesson. You cannot appease a bully, okay? You give a bully what they ask for, they're just going to ask for more. But Ahab is upset. And apparently taking all his family and his money and all that was not that big of a deal. But taking his personal toys, I mean, that was crossing the line, right? That was going too far. And I just think this is a picture of a man with some very warped personal priorities. He wouldn't fight for his faith. He wouldn't fight for his country. He wouldn't fight for his family. But he is going to stand up and fight when they try to take his tchotchkes away, right? When they try to take away his toys. When they take the pictures out of the house, he's going to fight for that. Ahab is a person that constantly had his heart in the wrong place. He was always putting his comfort above his calling. He ordered his loves in the wrong way, right? How many of you have ever been maybe from Sunday school or something? You remember the acrostic JOY? J-O-Y. What does the J stand for? Jesus. And O stands for others. And Y stands for you. You guys have heard this before. Good. This is not new. Well, that's the right priorities. That's how we should order our heart, order our loves, right? God first, and then others, and then yourself last. But Ahab's acrostic would have been Y, right? You. He always put himself first. Listen, there's a reason why the very first of the 10 Commandments, Exodus 23, thou shalt have no other gods before me. God wants to be first. He wants first place in our life. He wants to have priority over everything. And what we tend to do is we tend to take good things, God's good creations, not even necessarily bad stuff, but good things, and put them above God, to put them as higher priorities than God. And God is jealous for that number one spot. I don't know what it could be. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your kids. Again, not bad stuff. Maybe it's possessing things. Maybe it's comfort. Maybe it's familiarity. Maybe it's politics. I don't know. You don't have to worship Baal to be an idolater. You just have to put something above the Lord. Putting things where only God belongs. Okay? How do we know what our real priority is? How do you know what is number one in your life? A pretty good indication is to look at your calendar, to look at your checkbook. We tend to spend our time and our money, two of our most precious possessions, on what is truly important to us. Okay? What about this? What will you sacrifice? What are you not willing to sacrifice? Okay? What makes you anxious? What makes you feel threatened? If somebody was, to come and say, you're going to lose this, what would set you off? All right, that's what happened to Ahab. Ahab gave up his family without a fight. He gave up his money without a fight. But when it came to his stuff, let's fight. No, we're going to get it on here. That's what made him feel threatened. Ahab is an absolute mess in this chapter. And I think we're meant to see that. Actually, all of the chapters left in 1 Kings are meant to show us how much of a mess that Ahab was. Okay? But you know what stands out more than that, I think, in this chapter? More than the mess of Ahab, it's the grace of God. And that's what's cool about this chapter. Let's keep reading. This is really neat, okay? Let's keep reading. We'll pick up in verse 9, and we'll read down to verse 13. It says, Wherefore he said unto the messengers of Ben-Hadad, Tell my lord the king, all that thou didst send for thy servant at the first I will do. But this thing I may not do. And the messengers departed and brought him word again. And Ben-Hadad sent unto him and said, The gods do so unto me, and more also, if the dust of Samaria shall suffice for handfuls for all the people that follow me. And the king of Israel answered and said, Tell him, let not him that girdeth on his harness boast himself as he that putteth it off. And it came to pass when Ben-Hadad heard this message, and he was drinking, he and the kings in the pavilions, that he said unto his servants, Set yourselves in array. And they set themselves in array against the city. And behold, there came a prophet unto Ahab, king of Israel, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou seen all this great multitude? Behold, I will deliver it into thine hand this day, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Okay, now this is amazing. Ahab and his council here, they suddenly grow a spine, and they stand up to King Ben-Hadad, right? And Ahab actually has this great line. Even a dead clock is right twice a day, right? Ahab is terrible king, terrible person, but that doesn't mean everything he said was bad. This is a great line. He says, Let not him that girdeth on the harness boast as he that putteth it off. You know what he's saying? Let me put that in modern English for you. He's saying, don't celebrate a victory before the game starts, okay? Or as the famous American said one time, don't count your chickens before they hatch, right? You are celebrating too early, Ben-Hadad. You don't know what's going to happen. And this made Ben-Hadad mad. He's there drinking with the leaders in the middle of the day, and he hears this. He just gets really angry, and he sets up all his soldiers to go around. And here's where the second principle comes in. Because God sent a prophet. Now, it's not Elijah, it's not Elisha, it's not any prophet we know, it's an unknown guy. But God sends a prophet to speak to Ahab. Okay? Why did God do that? He tells us why he did it. He says, I'm going to deliver Syria into Israel's hand. I'm going to give you this battle so that you will know that I'm the Lord. So you will know that God is the Lord. And this is where this chapter kind of shocks me, because it sure seems in this chapter like God is still trying to get a hold of Ahab. God is still after Ahab. And you think, Ahab? Ahab was the worst. Seriously, he's like one of the worst people in the whole Bible. Don't you think Ahab had enough chances? How many of you have seen as many miracles as Ahab has? None of you have, right? He got warnings from prophet after prophet, and it seems to me that God was still after him, that God was still giving him chances, okay? I would look at Ahab, and Ahab deserved anything he got. Any punishment he got, he was terrible. But God was not going to give him that. God didn't give him what he deserved, and God gave him things he did not deserve. And by the way, those are the definitions of mercy and grace. Not getting what you do deserve and getting things you don't deserve. And so the second principle I want you to see tonight as we look at this story is don't underestimate the grace and mercy of God. God was just giving chance after chance to King Ahab. That's grace. Ahab didn't deserve that. God was not punishing him. God was withholding his punishment. That's mercy. Ahab didn't deserve that. You know, we like it when we get grace and mercy. But we have a hard time when other people are shown grace and mercy. But the Bible makes it clear God is a God of grace and mercy that extends beyond our understanding, right? When God described himself to Moses in Exodus chapter 34, this is how God kind of gave his biography to Moses. He said, "And the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth." God is long-suffering. God is gracious. God is merciful. Those are like three of his greatest characteristics. Gracious and merciful. How gracious and merciful is our God? Well, he was still showing grace and mercy to Ahab. And you might be tempted to think sometimes, God would never forgive me. I'm just too bad. God could never forgive me. Well, listen, have you done as much as Ahab did? How many prophets of God have you rounded up and murdered? Have you introduced like satanic worship into God's people? Maybe you think, well, God's given me too many chances. Have you had as many chances as Ahab had? Has God sent any prophets that did miracles before you, and then God kept giving and kept giving and kept giving chances? And you kept turning your back on God? God is gracious and long-suffering. And I believe he will be gracious and long-suffering to us as well. So don't underestimate God's grace and God's mercy. Now, don't take advantage of it either. That's not my message. But don't take advantage of it either. Don't think, oh, I'm just going to live it up and God's going to forgive me later. Well, he might, but never. I'm going to keep going. All right. So we're going to see God rescue Israel from Syria twice in this chapter. He does it twice. And he says both times why he did it. He did it so Ahab would know that God is the Lord. God wasn't just trying to save Israel from Syria. God was trying to save Ahab from Ahab. Every miracle, every chance, everything was the grace of God saying, I'm the Lord, turn back to me. That's what grace does. Grace pursues us when we're running away. So don't underestimate God's grace and mercy. Let's keep reading. Verse 14. It says, and Ahab said, by whom? And he said, thus saith the Lord, even by the young men and of the princes of the provinces. Then he said, who shall order the battle? And he answered, thou. Then he numbered the young men of the princes and the provinces, and they were 232. And after them he numbered all the people, even all the children of Israel, being 7,000. And they went out at noon. But Ben-Hadad was drinking himself drunk in the pavilions, he and the kings, the 32 kings that helped him. And the young men of the princes of the provinces went out first. And Ben-Hadad sent out, and they told him, saying, there are men come out from Samaria. And he said, whether they be come out for peace, take them alive, or whether they come out for war, take them alive. And so these young men of the princes of the provinces came out of the city and the army which followed them, and they slew everyone his man, and the Philistines fled, and Israel pursued them. And Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, escaped on a horse with the horsemen. And the king of Israel went out and smote the horses and chariots and slew the Syrians with a great slaughter. And the prophet came to the king of Israel and said unto him, Go, strengthen thyself, and mark and see what thou doest. For all the return of the year, or at the return of the year, the king of Syria will come up against thee. All right, so the prophet tells Ahab he needs to lead the men. He personally needs to lead the men into battle. And he needs to use the young men and the princes as his leaders. And these were not warriors. These were palace people. They were diplomats. They were probably kind of dainty. All right? And they were leading this tiny army. There was only 7,000 soldiers or 7,000 men in this city against Syria. And Syria was this massive army, 32 kings. That was like, there were city-states back then, so it wasn't like there were 32 giant countries. But 32 city-states in this whole army of Syria. And it didn't matter because God was with them. Now, Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, does something very bad here that God used to bring victory. Ben-Hadad, he thought he had this in the bag. And while all this is going on, he and these kings, these 32 kings, they're in the tent and they're getting drunk. They're getting sauced in the tent. Middle of the day. They're day drinkers. Okay? And twice in this chapter, it makes the point to point out that these men were drinking. That Ben-Hadad was drinking. In his stupor, most likely, he makes a critical blunder. And he tells the men, he tells his army, go get these guys, don't kill them. If they come in peace, take them as captives. If they come in war, take them as captives. And I don't know. But he's drunk. And so Israel comes out and they just kill everybody. Like they come out and they overwhelm these people with violence. And God delivers a victory, and Ben-Hadad and these leaders, they have to run away on horses because they got whooped. And that leads me to the third don't tonight, okay? Don't put your priorities in the wrong place. Don't underestimate God's grace. Number 3, don't be fooled by alcohol. Don't be fooled by alcohol. The Bible here makes an obvious point to show us that God used Ben-Hadad's drinking here to spoil his advantage. Drunkenness is a great spoiler. Drunkenness spoils our wealth. It spoils our talents. It spoils our time. It spoils our testimony. It spoils our family. Proverbs 20 verse 1 says, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Some of you have known personally how much alcohol or maybe drugs can take away. You've seen, maybe you saw it suck the life out of your parents, spoil your parents, or worse, you've seen it spoil your children. Maybe you've had the misfortune of having no food in the pantry but booze in the fridge. You know, when you meet people that are given over to this, I have a tendency to be compassionate, to have compassion on them. Because nobody ever wakes up and says, you know what I want to do with my life? You know where I want to be in 5 years? I want to be trying to steal Listerine from CVS. That's where I want to be in 5 years. Because I'm that addicted to alcohol. I want to just you know where I want to be? 10 years. Here's my 10-year plan. I want to be on dialysis in 10 years. I want to have liver disease in 10 years because I've drunk so much. Nobody sets out for that. None of these drug addicts, you see these drug addicts walking around from towns from time to time, and they look like they're in a haze, and you know they look probably 30 years older than they actually are half the time, and they're doing anything they can to get in the next fix. Nobody sets out for that. but it happens to people every day. Christian people should be people that are known for sobriety. The New Testament champions sobriety. Ephesians 5:18 says, "Be not drunk with wine, wherein is excess, but be filled with the Spirit." God doesn't want us to be under the control of alcohol. He wants us to be under the control of the Spirit. So don't give away your strength. Don't be a fool to alcohol. Don't even try this stuff. Now I'm going to skip ahead a little bit for our next point. I'll tell you what happens here. We're going to skip down to verse 30. But I'm going to tell you what happens in the meantime. Ben-Hadad goes back to Syria. He gets another army together, a bigger army together. They come up with this wonderful idea that the reason why they lost is because God is a God of the mountains and God was a God of the valley. So they're going to stage this second battle in the valley. And God's like, no, I'm a God of everywhere. And God sends them to whip them again. Okay? Again, they're outnumbered. They're outnumbered so badly they look like a little flock. And again, God sends a prophet. And the prophet again says, I'm going to give victory to Israel so you can know that the Lord is God. And God miraculously gives victory to Israel again. Now, all that happens before verse 30. Let's pick up in verse 30. And we'll read to 34 here. It says, "But the rest fled to Aphek into the city, and there was a wall fell upon 27,000 of the men that were left. And Ben-Hadad fled and came into the city into an inner chamber. And his servants said unto him, Behold now, we have heard that the king of the house of Israel are merciful kings. Let us, I pray thee, put sackcloth on our loins and ropes upon our heads, and go out to the king of Israel. Peradventure he will save thy life. So they girded sackcloth on their loins and put ropes on their heads, and came to the king of Israel, and said, Thy servant Ben-Hadad saith, I pray thee, let me live. And he said, Is he yet alive? He's my brother. Now the men did diligently observe whether anything could come from him, and did hastily catch it. And they said, Thy brother Ben-Hadad? Then he said, Go ye, bring him. Then Ben-Hadad came forth to him, and caused him to come up into the chariot. And Ben-Hadad said unto him, The cities which my father took from thy father I will restore, and thou shalt make streets for thee in Damascus, as my father made in Samaria. Then said Ahab, I will send thee away with this covenant. So he made a covenant with him and sent him away. Did you catch what happens there? God gives a victory to Ahab and to Israel over Syria twice. And the second time is so bad that all the Syrian leaders are huddled together in this city, and they know they're about to get wiped out, and they come up with this plan. Let's put potato sacks on. Let's put sackcloths on and ropes around our head. I have no idea what that means. Okay? And let's go beg Ahab for mercy. We've heard the kings of Israel are merciful kings. Let's go beg them for mercy. So they come out there with their tails between their legs. They come out there in utter defeat, begging for their lives. And you know what Ahab does, the turkey? He says, Is Ben-Hadad still alive? It's my brother. Go get him. And they go in and get this wicked king that's tried twice to wipe out Israel. Go get him. And he brings him up into his chariot. My brother, Ben-Hadad. This is the guy that just tried to take your wives, man. I know it was Jezebel, but still, took all your money. This is a guy that you had to fight twice, and the only reason you're still alive is because of the grace of God and the mercy of God. And you're going to call him brother? You're going to make a treaty with this guy? And God sends a prophet. Another unnamed prophet. This is one of the most interesting little stories in the whole Bible. Let me read this, verse 35 and 36. And a certain man of the sons of the prophets said unto his neighbor, and the word of the Lord, smite me, I pray thee. And the man refused to smite him. Then he saith unto him, because thou hast not obeyed the voice of the Lord, behold, as soon as thou art departed from me, a lion shall slay thee. And as soon as he was departed from him, a lion found him and slew him. So get this, a prophet goes to his neighbor. I don't know, maybe it was another prophet in their Bible school or something, and he says, God told me to tell you to hit me in the face. And the guy's like, no way. I'm not going to hit you in the face. And he says, okay then. Well, God told me to tell you, as soon as you leave here, a lion is going to come and gobble you up. And it's sure enough, this guy walks away, and a lion comes and gobbles him up. That's a Bible story. That actually happened. Am I the only person that thinks that's, like, are you guys asleep? Isn't that weird? What's the point of that? It seems so random. It's not random at all. You know, the point of it is when God tells you to smite somebody, you do it. When God tells you to kill something, you kill it. That's the point of that little story. It was a very graphic reminder for us. And you know, God had told Israel in the law exactly what to do in this exact situation here that they faced with Syria. Back in the law, do you know what they told them to do? To wipe them out. These were, don't be compassionate on them, these were wicked, godless men. They did things like when they built their cities, they would take their young children and they would bury them alive in the foundation of the cities in clay pots as offerings to their gods. They would offer their adult children for their young children. They worshiped devils. They were into every kind of sexual perversion that you can imagine. They were wicked, wicked people. And God said, wipe them out. If I bring them into your hands, you are to wipe them out. And what does Ahab do? He makes a treaty with them. He calls their wicked king brother. And God sent this prophet to Ahab. By the way, he went and he found somebody else to punch him in the eye. That guy was more willing after what happened to the first guy. You would be too. But he goes and he disguises himself and he goes to the king. Verse 42 and verse 43. It says, and he said unto him, thus saith the Lord, because thou hast let go out of thy hand a man whom I appointed to utter destruction. Therefore thy life shall go for his life, and thy people for his people. And the king of Israel went to his house heavy and displeased, and came to Samaria. Now I've given you 3 notes so far. I'm going to give you one more real quick and we'll be done. First one is don't put your priorities in the wrong place. Number 2, don't underestimate the grace of God. Number 3, don't be fooled by alcohol. Number 4, don't make friends with what God has told you to destroy. Don't make friends with what God has told you to destroy. Now, you're not Israel, and you're not fighting Syria. You're not kings. You don't have Ben-Hadad to worry about. But you do have things in the New Testament that God has told you as a Christian you are to give no quarter to. You are to destroy these things. You are to murder these things. Colossians 3:15 says, mortify. That word means murder. Mortify, therefore, your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Mortify, put it to death. Kill it. Don't make a treaty with it. Don't make friends with it. Don't call it your brother. There are some things that Christians just need to kill. Have nothing to do with. Have no part in your life. You cannot be friends with these things, or these things will destroy you. You can't be friends with sexual sin. You can't even play around with it. You can't joke around with it. Not in action. All right, that's fornication. Not in your mind. Not at all. Don't even play around with it. All right? Whatever you have to do to kill that sin, you do it. If you have to become a Luddite that doesn't have a computer or a smartphone, so you're not tempted to pornography, you do it. If you have to get somebody to be constantly checking up on you, some accountability person to constantly be checking up on you, you do it. Whatever you have to do, you kill that sin. You don't make friends with it. The same thing with covetousness. All right? You don't allow covetousness in your life. You don't allow this idea that if I had what he has or if I had what she had, then I'd be happy. You kill that thing. Murder it. Let me get where you live here, okay? How are you supposed to murder covetousness when you're buying magazines all about how so-and-so lives in a way that you never could? How are you supposed to murder covetousness when you're on YouTube every day watching and learning about things that you most likely will never be able to afford? Okay? We can't buddy up to this stuff. We don't let it in the chariot. It's an enemy. We're supposed to mortify it. We're supposed to kill it. Ephesians 5 adds some more things to the list. It says, but fornication and all uncleanness and covetousness, let it not be named, once named among you as become as saints, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. So it adds filthiness and foolish talking and jesting. These are all the things the world does. These are things your coworkers probably do if you work in the world. All right? They're completely normal. It's completely normal for the world to have a dirty mind. It's completely normal for the world to be covetous. It's completely normal for them to have a filthy mouth, to talk about foolish things. You have to murder that in your life. Have no part in it. Don't dabble in it. Do not bring that stuff into your chariot. Let it not once be named among you, it says. So what are these 4 principles? Let's just review them and we'll be done. All right, number 1, don't put your priorities in the wrong place. God deserves first place in your life, right? Whatever, don't put anything above that. Number 2, don't underestimate the grace and mercy of God. Like if God is still pursuing Ahab after all Ahab has done, God is still after you, okay? Number 3, don't be fooled by alcohol. Number 4, don't make friends with what God has told you to destroy. All right? Ahab never changed. Ahab did not, he bristled against the grace and mercy of God. Are you going to? Or are you going to change? Let's pray. Heavenly Father,